Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, Mr. President.
Good morning.
President, your official visit to the U.S. has generally been described as a huge success. Now, in terms of commitments, what have we gained as a nation, and what commitments were you required to make?
The visit to the United States is significant in the sense that it's virtually the continuation of my contact with President Obama when I was invited to G7 to brief them about the security in Nigeria. I was and still am very impressed with the concern the United States and Europe showed about the situation in Nigeria. And if you can recall, we based our campaign, when I say we, I mean the APC, on three basic issues in this country. Firstly, security. Secondly, unemployment, especially of the youth, which means the economy. And thirdly, corruption. These three fundamental issues is what I try to explain to G7, and on the invitation by President Obama, I went there, and this is what I discussed with the President of the United States, the Vice President, the Secretary of State, and other organizations and NGOs in the United States.
All right, Mr. President, you've already indicated the areas in which you engaged American officials, but let's look at security, for instance. You did indicate that intelligence and capacity building were two of the issues in which you sought help from the Americans. Now, what specific comments, Mr. President, did the Americans make with regard to these matters? And secondly, you have also touched on the role of the G7. Are the other international partners in the fight against Boko Haram still with us, following, of course, from what you have discussed with the American officials?
If you can recall, there is a meeting of Lake Chad Basin Commission consisting of Cameroon, Chad, Nigeria, Niger, and Benin Republic. We decided to have a multinational joint task force. And then each country to dedicate a number of troops to be placed in different parts of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, and that should be done by the end of this month. There are logistic problems. We discussed the logistic problems. We discussed the problem of equipping the troops there. We discussed about intelligence gathering. We discussed about the air support. And you all very well know that Nigeria is the main battleground. For that reason, Nigeria has to bear the large cost of this operation. And I have a comprehensive report on what the Boko Haram was able to do when they occupied more than 10 local governments in Borno State, some local governments in Yobe and Adamawa states. The destruction they made on the infrastructure, especially schools, hospitals, roads, blown up bridges, blown up markets. So we have made a list of these and what it will cost to quickly rehabilitate it. Again, the IDPs, internally displaced persons, there are more than 1.5 million spread over mostly those three states of Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, but they are in Kaduna, they are here in Abuja. What it will take to rehabilitate them in terms of repairing of the towns that have been razed down to the ground, like Baga, like Bama, and other towns, and then getting the infrastructure, schools, hospitals, and then maybe getting the teachers that survived and equipping them. It's a very expensive and a long list, but is verifiable and quantifiable.
One point that we also need to pursue has to do with equipment, to which you have also spoken. Nigeria, of course, faced some embarrassment some months ago when the country tried to shop for arms in supermarkets, as it were, going to South Africa, and our funds were withheld. I'm wondering, Mr. President, whether the Americans are now willing to sell some critical equipment to us.
The Americans are willing to help us. They understand our problem. They sympathize with us. This, I think, you ought to know from the time the Secretary of State was sent here before the election. He saw the former president. He saw chairman of INEC. He saw the then opposition. And America's stand was that they are not going to accept anything done in Nigeria outside the Constitution of Nigeria. And outside that means the Electoral Act. Now you know the moves made to frustrate the last election, including threatening INEC by telling them that their security cannot be guaranteed. And they asked for at least 6 weeks extension of the time of the election. Mercifully, those 6 weeks are within the time for the election. And then reluctantly, the opposition conceded. And the rest, as they said, is history. So really, the Americans have shown concern. They spoke to the former president, INEC, opposition, and maintain the pressure throughout. This, they are in the same agreement with Europe. And I think Nigerians tend to be grateful to United States and Europe for making sure that Nigerian elections are conducted according to the law.
Right, Mr. President, thank you for your response. Still on the matter of security, while in the U.S., you responded to the question about the Chibok girls, and you did say, of course, the intention of the Nigerian government to ensure that the children are returned safe and alive. And you talked about the reason, of course, for the relocation of the command control center. You know, how is the U.S. willing to assist in this area?
Yes, well, as I said, because of high technology the United States has, and of course the European countries and China, and lack of capacity in that field, and lack of an effective air force, not that we don't have the trained personnel, not that we don't have the basic infrastructure for its maintenance, but the problem is that in spite of the money alleged to have been spent on the operations, the Air Force is virtually non-existent. The fixed-wing aircrafts are not very serviceable. The few that remained, the helicopters, again, are not serviceable, and there are too few. And this is an operation virtually in an open country other than the Sambisa forest. So there is a need for Air Force to conduct reconnaissance and support the ground troops. The arrangements made by the former government will soon expire. We have made this clear to the Americans, we made this clear to G7, and we need their cooperation. Now this problem is not only in the Northeast. We have a problem of the Gulf of Guinea, which you know it is between Senegal and Angola. And the incredible theft of Nigerian crude, of the average of more than 250,000 barrels a day, which is being illegally loaded from our terminals by unpatriotic Nigerians that they only consider their own self-interest to get money. So we register the support and cooperation of the United States and other countries that sympathize with us to make sure the Gulf of Guinea is secure, so that those troops or those crude thieves will make it difficult for them to load at our terminals or at mid-sea and transport it to all over the world and sell it.
All right, Mr. President, thank you. Now, you have been unwavering in your determination to fight corruption, and during the election period, it was top of your party's manifesto. And in the U.S., to use your words, Mr. President, mind-boggling underhand dealings in the oil sector. How exactly do you intend to prosecute this war against corruption?
The multi-party democratic system for developing countries has its advantages and relative disadvantages, in the sense that for us to get the help of the developed countries, we have to get facts, documents, complete investigation, reliable ones, take them to court, and get people prosecuted. Meanwhile, the theft continues. Up to the 10th of this month, crude is being illegally lifted by people who are in government. We are trying to get these documents. We are getting cooperation of the international community. We are going very soon to make sure that those who perpetrated this theft against Nigeria will be faced with facts and be taken to our courts. And we got the cooperation of some of the countries, the destination of our crude, and we are discussing with them. We have to maintain high confidentiality so that we don't risk some of the loyal Nigerians that are helping us to trace the destination of this stolen crude, and then the accounts where it is, was being paid instead of the federal government account. I don't think the NNPC knows how many accounts there are outside there which payments are being made of Nigerian crude, which is not, which is really an outright theft. The monumental theft that had been going on for a number of years, a lot of Nigerians cannot comprehend.
Mr. President, well, thank you for your response. Just to follow up on the issue of tracing Nigeria's looted patrimony, in other words, receipts from crude oil sales that ordinarily should be in our national coffers. I'm wondering, Mr. President, yes, we have raised this matter with the U.S. President and a number of other friendly countries, but the experience often has been that the global financial system is often hesitant to let go of funds that they have received from illegal sources, usually around the world. We know of a number of countries, for instance, that have banking systems where there are no disclosures made. Are you hopeful that this time around, President Obama, that's to say the U.S., and let us add also the G7, are willing to ensure that the monies, some estimates of about $150 billion US, get back into Nigeria's national coffers?
Yes, I think I said they are willing, but I also told you that it has to comply with their own system, that we have to get the documents, especially the shipping documents, how they load here at our terminals, the destinations, and some of them change in the high seas, they change the crude and change the destinations, and then trace the accounts that the Lipton were paid instead of the federal government account. They are paid into individual accounts. So the cooperation we need is that once we got those shipping documents and we are lucky to trace them up to the countries where they sold the crude and in which account it goes, then we submit the evidence in terms of loading, in terms of the payments made in accounts other than the federal government account. Once we do that, they are very, very willing to make sure that those accounts are frozen and the money repatriated to Nigeria. It's not an easy process, but I assure you that we are working very hard. We cannot say we will wait until everything is intact before we let you know. Whatever we are able to get in the following months or a couple of months, then we will bring it out for Nigerians to know with the facts in our hands, and the prosecution started for those who perpetrated this unpatriotic action against Nigeria for so many years.
Mr. President, I'm saying that we have read quite a number of stories in our dailies about how you intend to deal with the NNPC. We would like you to confirm if it is true that you plan to break up the organization. And secondly, the question about the recurring problem of fuel scarcity. How does Mr. President intend to deal with that situation?
Well, firstly, I read the stories too, that I intend to break the NNPC. I think the best way to go about it is firstly to establish the fact of the magnitude of the inefficient way the NNPC conducted itself. When we do that, we'll be on a higher moral ground to do whatever recommendations I think some specialists will make to us. Secondly, your question about the problem of scarcity. Now, this is one of the major problems. As you all know, we used to have 4 refineries refining on daily basis an average of about 450,000 barrels a day. That infrastructure with more than 25 depots all over the country, from Maiduguri to Ilorin, from Gusau to Yola to Makadi to Port Harcourt to Ibadan. All that infrastructure has virtually been vandalized. And Nigerians were forced to buy products as at a world market, as if Nigeria hasn't invested in the industry. This is sheer corruption and inefficiency. And this destruction cannot be undone overnight. Firstly, we have to organize with our partners, those who have been prospecting and developing the petroleum sector for more than a generation. They have refineries all over the world. The swapping, which was turned into a major killing ground for corrupt officials, we can ask these people to lift the crude, work out how much they can bring back to us, and we pay for the transportation and for the refining. Part of it was some of the products that we don't need. There is no point to give some people licenses to go to world market and buy products and bring to Nigeria. And even the swapping is done in such a dishonest way that Nigeria was consistently losing on daily basis millions of dollars. I think the people who have been operating on the industry, a lot of them that took the decision, they display such a lack of conscience and patriotism. And only God knows the amount of damage meted on Nigeria.
Well, let's move on now to another point that came up in the course of your recent visit to the United States. You were reported as saying, Mr. President, that Nigerians should not expect ministers anytime before September. That is this year. The question that arises is, what factors are uppermost in your mind when seeking to appoint persons into positions of public trust?
Well, from what I saw so far, we need real patriotic Nigerians that can work very hard, knowledgeable, experienced, committed Nigerians to be in charge of ministries. A lot of the institutions of Nigeria, important institutions, and those that many of those institutions were compromised. Everybody was for himself and God for all of us. It's most unfortunate. We have the people. They are educated people, experienced people, but everybody seems to be working for himself. How much you could get as much and as soon as possible. We have to look for technocrats, and we have to look for politicians, and we have to look for certainly decent people in this class to give them the responsibility of being in charge of ministries and important parastatals. We will try as much as possible to avoid appointing hostages. By this I mean people who have been in the system but compromise their personal and professional integrity. It's taken so much time because a number of knowledgeable people have been compromised. People who would have liked to depend on them to manage our economy, to manage our security. A lot of them have been compromised. So the worst thing I think you will have is to get a compromised person to be in charge of an institution. There's no way he could be efficient. There's no way he could be patriotic. Somebody behind the scene will be teleguiding him at the expense of the nation. And this is what we are trying to avoid. And I assure you that so much damage has been done to Nigeria that we cannot rush, to give these responsibilities to people that have unfortunately been compromised. Because there is no way you can effectively supervise, say, 20 ministries. You have to give it to people you trust, and you allow them to perform according to the constitution of the country. Now, if you trust the wrong people, then you will be back to square one, and Nigeria will be the loser.
Mr. President, let me take you on to another matter for which Nigerians have expressed great concern, and that's the current standoff in the National Assembly, which has ensured that not much has been accomplished since the 8th National Assembly was inaugurated. And I'm sure also that Mr. President is also concerned. Now, is this hindering your work? Are you intervening, or will Mr. President intervene?
Well, I have to be very sensitive to the constitution of the country. I do not like to be caught by anybody, especially the legislature, that I'm interfering with them. They are the third arm of government. We have the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. And over the years, at least over the last 16 years, they have developed the system of choosing their leaders. There's no way I can directly interfere. All I can do through the party is to appeal to their conscience that what I already observed, we should go over it as soon as possible. When I say we, I mean the APC. We cannot win the battle and lose the war. We must not allow individual personal ambition to succeed in dividing us and allowing PDP to deal with us piecemeal. And this is what the National Assembly has allowed so far, the Senate and the House. This is what they are trying to allow, the APC, the PDP, to take over the government again. This is extremely disturbing. I am very, very worried. How can the APC mobilize itself and cause 70% attrition in the National Assembly? 70% of the members did not come back, and just to present it to them on a platter of gold. The only thing I can do is to appeal to the conscience of APC members of the Senate and the House of Representatives. It took us time to get to where we are. I don't want personal ambition to scuttle our success, and therefore fail to deliver on our promises to the nation.
Yeah, well, Mr. President, again, we'd like to thank you for your response to that question. In 2 days' time, it will be exactly 2 months since you were sworn in as President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, and about 30 years after you first left office in 1985. Now, how does the reality of your current office compare with your expectations? And in particular, what would you say has been the greatest challenge so far this past 2 months?
The greatest challenge, unfortunately, is what we foresaw in the APC and what we campaigned on. The 3 issues I referred earlier: the insecurity, the lack of employment, especially of youth. There is reliable data that more than 60% of Nigerian population are youth. And most of them, whether they have been to school or not, are unemployed. This is a big keg of gunpowder the nation is sitting on. And the economy is virtually in tatters because of corruption and inefficiency. And of course, the vicious circle of insecurity, unemployment, and corruption has to be broken. Otherwise, they will break this country. So through this medium, I'm appealing to Nigerians at all levels to be very, very conscientious of the situation we are in. Let us put our hands together and save this country. We will have to fight corruption to survive as a nation, because we have to get the infrastructure led by power. But the first thing, you have to secure the country before we can efficiently manage it. Without security, nothing will work. And we are asking for the cooperation of Nigerians. None of the part of the country can elude itself by thinking that it can go on its own. It's not on. Nigeria has come to stay.
Mr. President, we are mindful of your schedule, and so we would like to thank you immensely for starting your day and week with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Kingsley.
Well, that's right, Claire. Mr. President, I also join my colleague Claire in thanking you for coming on the program, Good Morning Nigeria. We do hope that you have a great week and oblige us with your time sometime in the future.
Thank you.